I think becoming a parent for me was the biggest shift in perspective that I've ever had in my life. Like I was saying, before I used to define myself by how well I dived, whereas now my son is the most important thing in my life, and he's now 3 years old. He was born in June 2018, and from that moment, it really just changed how I thought of myself. Like I was saying, diving defined me, but now I'm not just a diver. Hello.
Hello. Oh, it's so good to be here.
I know, right?
In real life.
Lovely.
As you just heard, my name's Elizabeth Day. I'm an author and broadcaster and the creator and host of the How to Fail podcast. And although it might seem counterintuitive to be interviewing one of the country's greatest sporting success stories at an event called GQ Heroes about failure, I'm firmly of the belief that we can only become heroes when we learn from things going wrong, rather than everything going according to plan. And that's why it's my total pleasure to be talking to Tom Daley, who started diving at the age of 7, and now 20 years later sits before us, an Olympic gold medalist, 2-time world champion, and yes, a prolifically skillful knitter.
Oh, yes.
Tom.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm very interested about that idea of failure shaping heroism. Is that something that you agree with?
Absolutely. I think so many people fail so many times throughout their life, and sometimes you can allow that to shape you in a negative way, or you can use those experiences to turn it around and turn it on its head and use it to fuel you in the right direction. And I know we're going to talk about a few of my failures throughout my life that have really helped to shape the person that I am today in order to have allowed me to become an Olympic champion, to become a better parent, to become a better husband. So there's so many things that have happened in my life that have been able to shape me just because of things didn't turn out to plan.
And do you think there's something specifically that athletes and sports people learn about how to rebound from failure? Because I know that there's a lot of talk around positive psychology, and a lot of your failures are in public. So how do you cope with that from a professional perspective?
I think as athletes, we often define ourselves by how well we do. And if we don't do very well, we all of a sudden think of ourselves as less than. And being able to have a sense of perspective around failure and it's something that I only really learned towards the end of my career, because early on, if things didn't go to plan, I found myself being really unkind to myself and not allowing myself to grow from it, just feeling really down about it. And it was only in the last few years that I've allow myself to fail, but then be kind to myself, be kind and try and learn from those experiences, and know that not every day is going to be a perfect day. Every day is a step in the direction that you want to go, but it's not going to be perfect every day. It's not going to be easy, and being able to rebound from the days that aren't so easy is what makes you able to become someone that is the best or the most elite or the most successful in that field. And just being able to understand failure and the things that don't go so well in that way is what has really shaped my career in diving.
Before we get on to those 3 failures that you've generously provided me with, what do you think made the change? What made you be able to be kinder to yourself? Was it becoming a parent?
I think becoming a parent for me was the biggest shift in perspective that I've ever had in my life. Like I was saying, before I used to define myself by how well I dived, whereas now my son is the most important thing in my life, and he's now 3 years old. He was born in June 2018, and from that moment, it really just changed how I thought of myself. Like I was saying, diving defined me, but now I'm not just a diver. I'm a parent, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm a knitter.
You're a style icon.
Well, I don't know about that. But there's all of these things and to be able to have things outside of what you see as being your main project allowed me to have a sense of perspective, and also honestly, throughout the pandemic, being able to actually realize that things can change at any moment. You're not in control of everything. Routine and structure can be thrown out the window at any moment. And just being able to roll with the punches a little bit and be very much in the moment and focusing on the process of what you need to do to achieve an outcome has been extremely important for me. So being able to be resilient, like we were talking about earlier, is really important.
Can you believe he's only 27? Like, if I'd been this sorted then, I'd be president of America by now. Let's talk about your first failure, which is not performing in Rio in the way you would have liked. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my first Olympics was in 2008, and I went to those Olympics very much as a young kid looking for experience, knowing that I had the London 2012 Olympic Games to come that was going to be the most... That was the thing that I dreamed of from such a young age. I was 9 years old when I had a little book that I used to draw in the front of that book, a picture of me in a handstand with the Olympic rings either side saying London 2012, and that was my dream when I was 9 years old to go to those Olympic Games. And I think that, the power of manifestation and visualization and getting yourself there was one thing, but going into London 2012, I had a lot of pressure externally from a home Olympic Games. But then you add in the fact that you're an athlete and you've trained for that moment and you have so much pressure just to make it go right on that one day is a lot for... I was 14 in Beijing and then I was 18 in 2012. And to deal with that kind of pressure was a lot. It turned out well in London 2012 with a bronze medal, and I was super happy to become an Olympic medalist. But in 2016, that was what I thought was going to be my time to become an Olympic champion. I thought it was going to be my time to be at my physical best, my mental best, and everything had lined up to be the best competition that I could ever have. I'd won a bronze in the synchro already, and then going into the individual event, in the prelim rounds, I won the prelim with an Olympic record, and all of this was happening, and I was like, you know what, this is going to be my time. And then the next day when I had to do the semi-final before the final, I had the worst competition of my life, finished in 18th place and last, and crashed out of the competition and didn't even make it into the final to be able to contend for the Olympic gold medal. And for me, that was one of my lowest moments of my life, not just in my sporting career, but it was one of those things found it so hard to comprehend the amount of hard work, effort, sacrifice, and dedication I put into that one day. For it all to go wrong felt like it was like my heart had been ripped from my chest. And it was actually in that time that my husband was there in Rio with me. He wasn't my husband at the time because we were getting married the next year, but he was there, and we went for a walk afterwards, and I was just distraught. And it was actually him that said to me, Tom, today may not have been the day that you were going to win an Olympic gold medal. Maybe your story doesn't end here. Maybe your child is meant to see you win an Olympic gold medal.
Oh, that's such a beautiful thing to say.
And 5 years later, my son got to see me win an Olympic gold medal.
Oh, yes! Tom, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. At the time, I was like, surely not, no, that's not, you're just saying that, you're trying to make me feel better, that's not going to be a thing. And, it feels like one of those things that everything happens for a reason. There's so much that goes into those Olympic medals, and to do it alongside one of my best friends, Matty, was just incredible as well. And behind those medals are all the people that have helped, my coaches, my psychologists, nutritionists, strength coaches, friends, family, my local barista who makes coffee, whatever it is. There's so many people that go behind that one thing, and it really is I remember when the national anthem started playing, I had imagined as a kid that I was going to be able to belt out the national anthem at the top of my lungs. And as soon as that flag started going up and the national anthem started playing, I completely lost it. I was like a blubbering mess. And my synchro partner, Matty, was just like, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And I was more upset about the fact that I wanted to be able to sing the national anthem, and I just was so overwhelmed with them. And I'm not a crier, and I'm not someone that gets overwhelmed in that sense, but I dedicated my whole life to that, to achieving that, and it was extremely overwhelming in that moment. But yeah, it was amazing, and I was sad that no one was able to be there, like my friends and family, to be able to watch because of the situation. But it was a special moment.
Your second failure, and I'm so glad you've chosen to talk about this, because I think it's really brave and interesting. And in your words, it's your failure to come out for fear of losing sponsorships and fans. That was a real fear, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was after 2012, and I was experiencing what they call like the Olympic blues, where I didn't really look past what was happening in that time. And at the same time, like I was in the public eye, I was already exploring my sexuality and dealing, and that's it's a difficult thing to do anyway growing up, whereas if you're having constant questions about your sexuality, do you have a girlfriend, what's going, like all of these things constantly, it can be really quite distressing. And I met Lance in March 2013, so 9 years in March it'll be. And for that whole year, I was like struggling with the fact of like, what am I going to do now? Like, how am I going to tell people? How can I be myself? And at the time, my management, I have different management now, but my management at the time were very much made me feel like if I came out, I was going to lose sponsorship, I was going to lose all my fan base, and would I be able to compete in certain countries? They didn't know. And it was this thing that really terrified me. And, you know, then it was also being able to tell the rest of my family. And I kind of got to a point where I was like, you know what, if people don't like me for who I actually am, then like they don't actually know the real me anyway. So when I came out, I didn't really think of it as anything other than me just being able to do it in a way that no one could ask any follow-up questions, no one could twist my words, and I was able to say exactly what I wanted to say, the way I wanted to say it, and that was why I did it on YouTube. And at the time, I didn't really realize that it would be a thing, but now looking back, when I was younger, there weren't really any out athletes that were competing at the highest level. It was either they'd come out once they'd retired or at the very end of their career. And now, having gone to the last Olympics, those Olympic Games had the most out LGBT athletes than any of the previous Olympics combined. So we're moving in the right direction in terms of visibility to allow young kids and people first getting into the sport to feel like they have a place in sport. But there's still, like, I mean, for example, there's 10 countries where it's still punishable by death that competed at the Olympic Games. And I think it's one of those things that I really want to try and push for, to not allow countries that have anti-LGBT laws or anti-women laws to be able to host a major sporting international competition. Because if it's not safe for the athletes to go there or safe for every single spectator to go there, they shouldn't have the privilege to be able to host a major competition like the Olympic Games or the World Cup in Qatar next year, for example.
Preach.
Yeah.
I wonder, because we are talking about failure and success, and those are quite clunky, imperfect terms, but I've come to realize through doing the podcast that success for me is about living authentically. And I wonder if you feel, if you hadn't been able to be public about your sexuality, whether you think that that would have been a bigger failure of selfhood.
Absolutely. Like you have to be happy within yourself and be able to be true to you before you can start. And also, it's just being able to look after yourself and being kind to yourself allows you to be your best self to look after others as well. Although you always want to try and be there for other people, it's kind of like one of those things like you have to put your own mask on before you put someone else's on the airplane. You have to be able to give your best self to other people in order to be able to have the best outcome for everyone. And I think I think if I hadn't come out, who knows how, depressed and down, because I was already feeling so insecure and down and not feeling like I could really and truly excel the way that I wanted to, because I just felt like I had this weight bearing down on me, because I always felt like I was doing something wrong, and I always felt on the outside and I wasn't quite doing the right thing. So for me to finally come out really allowed me to be the best athlete that I could be.
And it's wonderful to witness you stepping into your power. So thank you for talking about that. Your third and final failure is your failure to put life first and diving second.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I think for my whole life,
this picture.
On Paul's eye. I'm making a dog jumper there, actually.
Obviously.
Yeah. My whole life I'd spent, again, defining myself by how well I dived, and who I was as a person was always about diving. Especially going into 2016, I didn't have anything else going on in my life. Diving was my everything. I slept, was breathing diving. All I would do was just focus on making sure I did everything possible. And then I realized that whether you do that or you don't, there's the chance that it can all go wrong, and you have to be able to live your life and be happy and feel like you're moving in the right direction at the same time. So in this last year, throughout the pandemic, I think there's just been a whole shift in what is good for me. And everyone has a different thing that is going to work for them. But for me, spending time with my family, spending time being able to be with my friends, enjoying my life outside of diving, having something to look forward to at the end of the week. Just little things that I was not doing in 2016, in the build up to 2016, where I was just basically locked myself away and was just doing all I could to be the best diver I could. Whereas going into these Olympic Games, I allowed myself to be me. I allowed myself to enjoy my life. I allowed myself to have things outside of diving that I enjoyed. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I found knitting, because I'm someone that's always on the go. I'm someone that's always doing something. I have to of going for walks, or I want to go to a museum, or I want to go get food. And I really struggle just to sit still. And this was a combination, well, it was actually Lance, my husband, who said that people on film sets would often just knit squares. So I started to knit squares, and me being an athlete and having to do everything the best that I could, started to learn to knit through YouTube, and just became obsessed with it. And then lockdown happened, and I had a lot more spare time on my hands, and I found it to be the most calming and mindful, and also like a healthy distraction for me to do. So it was, yeah, helped a lot.
Also bear with me here, because I think knitting is a great metaphor for failure.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
if you drop a stitch, if you fail when you're knitting, you need to address it then and there. You need to rectify it and process it. You can't ignore it, because it will ruin the whole thing.
Exactly. You can fix it there and then, or you can do about 6 rows and then you realize that you've done a mistake. But you can always go back and fix the mistake.
Yes.
There's always a way to go back and fix any mistake, or fix something that you don't think has gone right. And I also think it's a good metaphor for being able to process things that you've kind of swept under the rug. Because oftentimes, I think lots of people have often swept things under the rug and think, oh no, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. But I think what this pandemic has done is brought people together in a way that they're able to talk about things that haven't gone right, and things that are bothering them, and things that whether it be mental health or like issues that they've had in the past, being able to bring them up and try and sort them out. Because oftentimes, if you sweep things under the rug without actually truly processing them, it can be extremely difficult. Because when I lost my dad to a brain tumor in 2011, I did not allow myself to grieve whatsoever. I just kind of carried on with diving and just was go, 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 and didn't even want to think about it. And it wasn't until I met Lance, where he was really curious why I would never speak about him, and kind of was always, I always felt like I never wanted to make anyone feel uncomfortable. So for me now, being able to go back and process all of the things that have happened in my past, I feel like I've gotten to a place where I feel now most at peace, and I feel content, and I feel happy with the way that my life has panned out through all of the failures, through all of the bad times, has allowed me to fly higher than I ever thought I'd be able to.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the magnitude of that loss. I'm so sorry. And I remember your dad from TV footage, and it was a tragedy. And I can't believe he was only 40 and you were only 17.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that you spoke about that. And I think it's just a credit to the man that you are, that you've been able to deal with that and be the champion that you are.
He was an amazing man, and he actually taught me one of my biggest life lessons that I ever learned from my dad was going into my first senior national championships. I was terrified about competing, and I said to my dad, I don't know how I'm going to compete tomorrow. I'm going to make a fool of myself. I'm 9 years old competing against adults that are up to 30 years old. What am I going to do? And he said to me, how many people are in that competition tomorrow? I said, I think roughly about 18 people. And he said to me, okay, Tom, let's just say you come last and you come 18th in the national championships. You're going to be 18th best in the whole country. And how cool is that? And I kind of just took me, I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, if I do come last, if I do come 18th, that is bloody cool that I've put all that effort in, and I am 18th best in the whole country. And he gave me that sense of perspective and that sense of no matter what I did, he was going to be proud of me. And that's something that I always want to pass on to my son. And it's what my mum has continued to do as well. And that's what my family and friends are amazing at, is allowing me to feel loved and supported. And no matter the outcome, it's irrelevant.
My final question is going to be about fathers and sons and your
Yes.
son and whether you're teaching him how to swim.
He's been to swimming lessons, and he does. Although there was one time when we went to a swimming lesson, and everyone was lining up on the side to jump in for the first time. Or it wasn't the first time. We had been in for a few lessons, and I was at the end, and I was thinking, oh, Robbie's going to jump in, and it's going to be great. Obviously, I'm a diver, and he's going to love it. Everyone's jumping in and having a good time. And he stood on the end. It was like Robbie's turn. And he was like, I don't want to jump in, Papa. I was like, you know what? Good for you. Come on, like climb in, get in the pool. It's totally cool. And it was just one of those funny things of like, you know what? Kids are so special and have their own mind, and they always want to do what they want to do. And the one thing that my mum and dad have always done for me is they supported whatever choices I made. And whether I wanted to do something or if I didn't, they all just were able to pour all of their love, support, and energy into that. And I think that's one thing that I've really want to be able to take those lessons that they've taught me. And like at the time I didn't know, but at the time I just thought my mum and dad were extremely embarrassing. But now, like you see how much your parents sacrifice and do for you, and I just want to be able to pass that on to Robbie.
Tom Daley, you are a hero in the true sense of the word. We are so proud of you in this room. We are so proud of you in this country. Thank you for doing everything you do.
Thank you.
And thank you for teaching us how to fail.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.